Good morning, students. Today, Padmaja Behera, has come with another video on the chapter A Triumph of Surgery, which is the first chapter of the book Footprints Without Feet. As you must be knowing the title, just have a look. A Triumph of Surgery, which means victory. Triumph means victory. And surgery, like the concerned person has been cured after going to the doctor. Now let's proceed to the theme. Like I always, before going to a particular chapter, before teaching, I always tell the theme. This chapter is also based on the theme that too much of anything is bad. Children, it is really true. Too much. If you eat too much, then also it is bad. Too much of pampering by parents is also bad. Misuse of money by the rich people like Mrs. Pumphrey, who overfeed her pet, and as a result, the pet becomes sick. Now let's have a look on the summary. The story is about Tricky, a dog who is the pet of a rich lady named Mrs. Pumphrey. She loves her dog very much and is unable to refuse him anything he wants. Tricky is fond of eating cream cakes and chocolates. So one day, when Mrs. Pumphrey is out with Tricky for a walk, the narrator, James Harriet, sees him and stops to talk because he could rationalize that the dog is ill. While talking to Mrs. Pumphrey, he realizes that she has been overfeeding Tricky and also had been giving him things that he shouldn't eat, due to which Tricky had started looking like a bloated sausage. Soon Tricky got unwell, and Mrs. Pumphrey had to call Mr. Harriet for help. She does not want to send him away, but that was the only way suggested by Dr. Harriet to get him hospitalized for 15 days. Dr. Harriet was an experienced doctor, so he could rationalize that Tricky had to be hospitalized. Tricky had to be kept on strict diet. Now let's have a brief character sketch of the lady Mrs. Pumphrey, the owner of the dog, Tricky. Mrs. Pumphrey was a rich and emotional lady who has a cute pet called Tricky. She loved him so much that she overfed him. Tricky had put on a lot of weight, which made him lethargic. When Dr. Harriet saw the fat dog like a bloated sausage, he was shocked. He made a plan and told Mrs. Pumphrey that Tricky needed treatment for an ailment which was possible only in hospital. The doctor knew that Mrs. Pumphrey would not be able to keep the dog on a proper diet. When the greedy dog went to the hospital, he had to remain hungry. If he was slow to approach for food, he was given food at regular intervals. Soon, Tricky shed off a lot of his body weight and became quite active. When Tricky was at home, he was pampered by Mrs. Pumphrey, who had a luxurious life when he was served with cream cake, chocolate, and Horlicks. But when he came to the doctor, he became all right. And Mrs. Pumphrey becomes very happy seeing her active dog. She thanked the doctor and felt that it was a triumph of surgery, a victory of surgery. Now, children, just have a look at the narrator. The narrator, as I told you earlier, is a veterinary doctor who is a very compassionate and a honest man, as he does not unnecessarily operate upon Tricky. He goes out of the way to guide Mrs. Pumphrey that she should start keeping a strict check on Tricky's diet and, of course, his exercise. Dr. Harriet was very tactful. He knew how to get Tricky to the hospital, and his common sense can be seen by the simple fact that he just changed the eating habit and exercise schedule of Tricky, which helped him recover from his problems. He did not unnecessarily put him on medicines. Now, just have a look at the title, The Triumph of Surgery. When Mrs. Pumphrey was leaving, she leaned out of the window and said to Mr. Harriot, with tears of joy in her eyes, that she could not thank him enough for what he had done. She only says, "This is the triumph of surgery," which meant that the treatment which was given to Tricky had been successful. The story unfolds into how Tricky gets well after going to Dr. Harriot. Because Dr. Harriot knew the reason behind Tricky's illness. Children, please go through the chapter thoroughly, as you might get some MCQs questions and it will be difficult for you to answer. So please go through the chapter. Thank you, children.